Hey, welcome to the People Show. Sorry about that. We are having some issues here, just getting set up with you. We're running a little bit behind. I want to welcome everybody to the Monday night edition of the People Show. We are in the month of June and we are entering into, of course, where we are again are acknowledging the contributions of those who have contributed to American history through Black history. And of course, every Monday night, I want to bring to you a Black history clip that of some Black history that you may or you may not know. So we're going to be doing that every Monday night, not just during the month of June as we are approaching um, as we're approaching Juneteenth, which is June 19th, and commemorating the the Emancipation Proclamation that had been into effect for more than 2 years, and the people in Texas had not been advised that they were actually free until that information was brought to them. And so we are now, it is a federal holiday, and we are
Ready to connect. Click connect to show.
we now recognize that. So getting
Connected as the host.
certainly getting
Host. You are
set
now
up
in the
there.
host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio web interface.
All right, so you all are going to be able to call in because of that announcement. You heard the announcement there. So you'll be able to call into the show at 951-221-8221. So, as I said, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to bring that up in just a few minutes, where I'm going to show you a Black History moment clip of a great Black American that has done something here that we all still enjoy, but again, that we may or may not know about. And why is that important? I think it's important for us to remember and to reflect on the contributions of Black Americans that have contributed to the wealth of this country as it is today, and that the country enjoys the benefit of those people who made major contributions in history that we don't hear much about. And of course, there are people today that are making major contributions in history that we don't hear much about. And I think that any opportunity that we get, we should demonstrate that and show where the contributions are, which are encouraging to people who, young people, encouraging to middle-aged people, encouraging to older people, encouraging to us all that we make a major contribution to the wealth and well-being of this country, and that our foreparents have made major contributions to the wealth of this country. And we need not forget about that or allow for anybody else to forget about that. So that's what I believe to be important. And so we're going to do that. And you'll be able to call in and you'll be able to participate in the program at 951-221-8221. We're also going to be talking about the Chicago police officer that was shot accidentally and killed by her partner in what was a police chase of an alleged person that of interest that they said allegedly had a weapon, and ended up in this chase and going into a building. And that police officer ended up being fatally shot accidentally by her own partner. Now, what we're going to talk about and what my concern is, and I'm going to just put this out there because this is what my concern is that police departments need to operate independently of politics. When you have a police superintendent needs to be able to do his or her job, notwithstanding politics or PR campaigns or a mayor interfering. If you hire a police superintendent who has obviously the credentials, who has the qualifications, who has been hired to do that job, is hired because they have what it takes to administer a police department. A mayor does not. A governor does not. A lawyer does not. So when you hire someone to do a job, you have to allow for that person that you have hired to do their job. The mayor needs to butt out of making decisions, policing decisions for the police department. I don't care what mayor it is, Mayor Johnson at this point, whether it was Mayor Daley, whether it was Mayor Emanuel, whether it was Lightfoot, whoever. The mayor needs to get out of the way of the police superintendent administering his job. It is Larry Snellen, who is a police superintendent. He needs to have the full autonomy because he has the full responsibility for administering the police department. And it needs to be free and independent of politics. And I say that in part because, not just because, but in part because there are too often and too many times that there have been incidents that have taken place within the police department, whether it was a police-involved shooting of a citizen, whether it was the police involved in some type of crime themselves, whatever the case may be. The police department needs to be transparent, and the police department needs to be free of any type of politics. When there are tragic events, whatever the case may be, the public needs to have a police department and a leader of the police department who demonstrates real leadership with character and with conscience and with courage to be able to provide information to the public that the public can trust that person's leadership. The superintendent does not need, nor should be required to report to the mayor before the superintendent responds to anything that takes place on the police department. The police superintendent is responsible for the men and women that function under his leadership, and he's responsible for working with the district commanders, working with his executive branches, his deputy commanders, with putting in place standard operating procedures and practices that are going to prioritize keeping the public safe, keeping police officers safe, and addressing crime in and around our communities, and how that coincides with the public. That's what his focus has to be. And his focus should never have to be on what it looks like politically. Politics needs to be removed from the police department. In particular, we're talking about the Chicago Police Department. Now, I do not know all of the facts. When I say all of the facts, from the time that it was decided that a group of police officers were going to pursue this individual, what the strategy was, whose decision it was made. I don't know all of those facts, and I don't know that we will ever know all of those facts. What we do know is that a police officer was tragically killed and shot in the back accidentally by her partner. Now, the procedures of what they executed, it is the responsibility of the superintendent of police, the supervisors, the commanders, the district commanders, all of them to look at every step that was taken in that particular incident to see what procedures failed and how they can learn for it and improve for this, providing to making sure that in these incidents, in these very dangerous investigations, that safety is a priority. The safety of the police officers and the safety of the community, of the public. Yes, you want to address problem people in the community. You want to address criminal activity in the community. But there has to be a strategic, professional, organized approach to remedying those and addressing, those situations and circumstances prioritizing the police safety and the public's safety. The police have more resources than one individual or one alleged suspect or alleged problematic person. You have a lot more resources and information on that person that you're pursuing. So you may not necessarily get that person in that one time. So you may have to be a lot more strategic, a lot more surgical in the approach of apprehending people who are problematic in the community, so that we do all that you can to minimize the threat of losing a police officer or a police officer getting injured or a member of the public being injured, or being collateral damage, all in the name of apprehending a person who is alleged to be a problem in the community. Now, this is not a program that is to berate or slam the Chicago Police Department. I am a supporter of the Chicago police officers. There are great concerns about the Chicago Police Department. There are serious trust issues about the Chicago Police Department. I have them, many people have them, but it doesn't mean that we can't support our police at the same time question and hold to account the activities of those people who are responsible for our public commons. So this program is not about that. This program is not about conspiracies. It is about dealing with things based on the facts that we know and the conditions. Now, there were some things that I was very concerned about in the aftermath of this. In fact, when I was driving home, because I live very near the community where this took place, and I happened to be driving home right after that incident had taken place, because there were police that were passing and coming and going from every direction, converging to that location. And when I turned down the street on 83rd Street going back east, I saw the chopper in the air and heard constant barrage of sirens and police cars going east in that direction. I did not know what had taken place. I imagined that with that many resources going in the same direction, that it probably was not good, and it probably involved a police officer. Later on to find that a police officer had been shot and ultimately died as a result of their wounds. The aftermath is what the real concern is. The aftermath, and once that tragic incident took place, it took the disclosure of the facts of that more than 24 hours. In fact, I had conversation with several retired former police officers and conversations with people who are still involved with law enforcement, because I was calling to find out, because I had seen the report that was reported, and I was watching CBS News at 6:30 in the morning on Friday morning. Dana Kozlov was doing the report, and the report said that there was a police chase of an individual that they suspected of having a firearm. There was a chase where this individual ran into an apartment building, and these police officers went in behind this individual. The individual went into an apartment. They followed this individual, went into this apartment, and that there was a struggle. And during that struggle, there was another person allegedly that had a rifle, that pointed a rifle at the police, and the police fired, accidentally shooting. Now, this is not what the report said. The report said that another police officer's gun discharged. That's the way that it was reported. At 6:30 in the morning, more than 13 hours past the incident that took place at about 9:30 or somewhere thereabouts, 9:30, 10 o'clock, I don't know exactly the time that it took place, that they reported this. So that means that the police spokesperson, whoever it was, I don't know who it was, provided that information to CBS. CBS responded saying that they had more questions about the story and about what was provided to them because it was not adding up. That was at 6:30 in the morning. I had a conversation with other police officers because I called other police officers, former police officers, asking them what took place. They were reluctant to tell me what they knew or what was communicated to them. They said that they would call me back. By the time that they did call me back, I also reached out to other contacts that I have within the media to find out what took place. I was on the phone for quite some time, about an hour, almost an hour and a half, saying to, once they knew what took place, and this was before they had disclosed the truth about this. And there was a question about when should the police disclose what happened, and is there a way that they can clean this up? And my response in every question scenario that was posed, that you tell the truth. You tell the public the truth of what happened. The public can handle the truth. The public needs to be respected. And if the police department, one that we already have trust issues, are trying to find ways to politicize this, that in and of itself is the wrong start. So here we are now, more than 18 hours, 20 hours past this incident, and we still have not gotten the full story from the Chicago Police Department. This is the problem that we have between the public and the police department. The police department is our public commons. The public has the right to be able to trust its public commons, and the police department is one of those public commons. And it is these types of actions that bring about questions about that trust factor between the public and the police department. This is not a put down, it is not even a criticism, but it is certainly a critique that we must look at and we must move away from. And I would say, I've asked for Superintendent Larry Snellen to come on the program. They have not responded on many occasions. So I'm not begging anymore, and I'm not asking anymore. Obviously, they don't want or either feel the need to have to engage or want to engage in a conversation. Fine, not a problem. However, my engagement is with you, the public, and that we have a responsibility, and what we need to make sure that we are engaging and holding our public representatives and our public officials accountable to delivering the truth and delivering the facts to us. Here we're talking about the police department. The police department should not be politicized. The police department should be delivering to the community the facts about things that take place. The facts, not about their feelings, not about the mayor's feelings, not about the mayor's philosophy, but the facts about what is transpiring between the police department and police officers and the public. If there is to be a relationship of trust between the public and the police, you first have to start with being truthful, transparent, with open communications. That has to be priority. That has to be paramount. In any relationship, there has to be an open, transparent, truthful, honest exchange from the police department to the public, from the public to the police department. If there is going to be a building of trust between the public and the police department, it has to start based on the police department telling the truth. The fact is that we have 540 cases in this city, more than any other state in the United States of America, of wrongful convictions. Not to mention the wrongful deaths that have taken place at the hands or at the guns of police officers. Still, we need to do all that we can to build, not rebuild, because I don't think there was ever, but to build a working trust between the public and its police department. That is possible, it's doable, but there has to be an intention to do that. And that intention has to first and foremost start with telling the truth to the public. Period. Period. There can be no other way to posture that. Again, I'm not getting into facts that I don't know. I'm not getting into any of that. This is purely about what happened in the aftermath and the problem that still persists with trying to politicize this tragic accident of a police officer in the middle of a pursuit or during the course of a pursuit is accidentally shot and killed by a fellow police officer. The police department, the police command, the sergeants, the supervisors, the superintendent, they're all going to have to look at the entirety of the actions that were taken from the time that they knew or the time that they were alerted, and then what happened after that. What were the decisions? What were the plans? What were the strategies or not? And how you were going to pursue an alleged person of interest. That is the paramount question. In order to learn from this tragedy, it's not going to bring back Officer Rivera, but to prevent it from happening to any other officer. What are the strategies? How do you move forward in procedures, in pursuit of people who are alleged to be people illegally carrying or people who may be wanted with warrants. There still has to be strategic safety planning. When this, I'm told that they found this information out when they were in the police station at 77th and Halsted, when this individual was spotted on the pod cam at the police station. So they had the information, or then what was the next step? What was the procedure? What was the conversation? What was the planning, if any, on how they were going to approach that particular situation? Now, if somebody's saying that, well, you don't have time to plan, yes, you do. There needs to be constant planning, constant training on how to approach dangerous or could be dangerous situations. There has to always be a plan, scientific, on how you're going to broach these situations. So those are serious questions. And I wonder, what was the planning? What was the conversation? What was the discussion between all of them? What was the discussion between them? What was the plan? Who authorized it? What was authorized? All of those questions need to be raised in that district, the procedural, all around the city. The superintendent needs to look at this, because we need to keep officers safe. We need to keep the public safe. And we also need to make sure that they are operating within due process of the law, not violating anyone's rights in pursuing to apprehend an alleged person of interest for whatever the reasons are. Because I suspect that when they look at this in its totality, they will find and demonstrate certain practices that would have prevented Officer Rivera, or certainly prevent another officer who would be in similar scenarios, would take a different approach to absolutely increase the opportunity for safety on both sides, on all sides. That is what my observation and my thoughts are about approaching a situation like this, to making sure that we are operating with professionalism and efficiency as much as we possibly can. All right, now, let me remind you, please make sure that you tune in to Channel 7 tonight at 10 o'clock. I am doing a series of reports, and there is going to be a bombshell disclosure of something that we have discovered, again, within the city of Chicago, photo enforcement of speed cameras. And we're also looking further at legal action. We have been in this and on this policy since 2009. It's about 16 years that we have been challenging photo enforcement of red light cameras and speed cameras here in Chicago. And we are now discovering even more so that there's another layer of concern about the fairness and the application of this policy. Now, at the time that I did that interview and did that story with Jason Knowles on Channel 7, I did not know at the time I did not know at the time that more than 40% of the 2.5 million tickets that were issued at 26 miles an hour, 31 mile an hour, 36 miles an hour, 41 mile an hour should never have been issued. There are more than 40% of all of the tickets issued because of the inaccuracy of the camera. Now, that story is going to be on at 10 o'clock tonight. I want you to watch that story. We're also going to be meeting this Thursday at the Woodson Regional Library at 9525 South Halsted Avenue at 5:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. 10 by 10 to win and Citizens to Abolish Red Light Camera. We are going to be meeting at the Woodson Regional Library at 5:30 on this Thursday. Please join us as we are continuing to put forth agenda items as we are working in collaboration with Black voters all across the city of Chicago and the county of Cook and the state of Illinois, organizing to build the independent Black voting bloc that we need. At the same time, while we are discussing ideas on what the issues of importance are, that we have to develop our own Project 2025 for the Black community, which has to be a collaboration of many of us. So join us on Thursday at 5:30 at the Woodson Regional Library. Most of us know it as the Carter G. Woodson Library, right there at 95th and Halsted, right on the corner. 95th and Halsted on the second floor. We'll be meeting there at 5:30, from 5:30 to 7. Our meetings are usually 6:30 to 7 or 6:30 to 8 on Thursday night. We do it by Zoom. This is an in-person meeting. We're going to start to having more and more in-person meetings, and we're going to have more and more in-person meetings all around the city and the suburbs. The public libraries are perfect places that we could do it because they're free. They don't cost us any money. So, and we can do them in areas that would be logistically convenient for people who would be participating and people that we hope to participate in building this independent block of Black voters to stand for and make sure that our communities are getting the investments that our communities deserve all across the city, all across the county where we live, all across in the state where we live, that we have the types of investments that are bringing in the kinds of industry that we need to increase opportunities for expanding the middle class. Expanding the middle class drives business. It's not the other way around. We have been sold this bill of goods by Ronald Reagan, starting it with Ronald Reagan in 1980, coming on up with all of the Republicans and some of the Democrats that support capitalism and forget about bringing poor people out of poverty into the middle class. Nobody wants to really talk about it in that tone. So that's what we're doing on Thursday night. So please join us Thursday night at the Woodson Regional Library. You can text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385, and then you can receive further updates on future locations. I'll also put that in the text so you can have it. It is going to require many of us. It is going to require many of us citizens collectively working together in order for us to equitably fight for, demand for equity for people in our communities. This is not a club. This is not a Mark Wallace club. This is about all of us. This is about fighting for those who may be and those who are disaffected and those who have disengaged because they just don't believe. Excuse me. They don't believe that anybody is really paying attention to them and their concerns. All of us have a responsibility to pay attention to the concerns of those who are certainly less fortunate than us. Those of us who are in the middle class, those of us who are doing okay, we don't have the luxury of saying, I made it and I got mine, get yours. To make our communities strong and welcome and inviting, we have to do all that we can and use every possible tool that is available to us to push that agenda, to push those people who are in our public spaces as representatives, to push them, to demand of them that they have to deliver to make our communities wealthy by having more people to participate in the building of the wealth and the enjoyment of the wealth and the enjoyment of the resources, the many resources that we have. That is what 10 by 10 to win is all about. Building that voice strong enough to speak on behalf of all of us, wherever our people reside in Chicago and Cook County. That is our pathway and our only pathway to ensuring that we have more people from our community that are brought into the middle class. We bringing more people into the middle class, that means we're bringing people out of poverty. We should have no poor communities, no poor people in Chicago, in Cook County. We should not have any poor people in the richest country in the world. There is something wrong with the distribution of how we have things set up and how things are happening. All right, so let me go to, and I'm going to get to that. I'm going to go back to that. But what I want to do is it is time to present our Black History moment. And so it's a clip that I always go through and look to find a clip to remind us of the contribution of one of our ancestors who has done great things and things that we are enjoying to this date that we may or may not know anything about. So, as I seek every week to bring some little tidbit, and it speaks for itself, I don't have to speak for it, it speaks for itself. And I find these, whether it be on YouTube or on TikTok or wherever it comes from, or looking in the history page about some contribution of what one of our forefathers has done that you and I and every other American is enjoying the benefit of at some point. Take a look.
In 1791, Thomas L. Jennings was born free in New York City. As a tailor, Jennings grew dissatisfied with cleaning methods that ruined fabrics. He invented dry scouring, a method to get clothing clean without damage from water soaking the fibers. It was the precursor to modern dry cleaning. In 1821, Jennings became the first African American granted a U.S. patent. Under the Patent Act of 1793, only citizens could apply, making this recognition for a black man groundbreaking. Jennings married Elizabeth, born into slavery in Delaware. Using his fortune from owning one of the largest clothing stores in New York City, he bought her freedom and ensured their children were born free. Jennings used his wealth to fund abolitionist causes, co-founded the Abyssinian Baptist Church, and supported Freedom's Journal, the first black-owned newspaper. Thomas L. Jennings proved that ingenuity could shatter barriers.
Thomas L. Jennings, our Black History moment of this week. And of course, every week we will bring you tidbits of that, of someone who has made great contributions that you and I are enjoying the benefits of, and others that are enjoying the benefit of, leading all the way up to Juneteenth. You see that I have on my Juneteenth shirt, and I will certainly say to those that we want to acknowledge, reflect, and learn and educate ourselves further, and educate those, our children and people who don't know. We need to, those of us who are constant learners of history, and I'm a constant learner of history, and certainly want to disseminate our accomplishments and our strengths, and certainly those things that make us strong and keep us strong, to keep us moving forward, and to remind us that we have much work to do. Those that came before us paved the ways and have laid the foundations for us to be able to progress a little bit further, but we have to continue that work. Some of us have become complacent, and some of us have become disconnected because of the lack of being informed about our history and about where we come from and what we came from and what we came through. So we have a responsibility to carry that on, each and every one of us, whether we have one or two people, or whether we have 100, or whether we have 10,000, whatever that audience is. We have the responsibility to share our experience, our lived experience, and those who came before us, and then we need to carry it forward, making whatever contribution that we can to improving things for our people. So I was talking about this whole middle class thing, and I saw an interview where we have all these TV shows, right? We have all these TV shows on Shark Tank and all of these programs, and where people are talking about getting rich and earning lots of money, which fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I earn a fair amount myself. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, that is a much smaller percentage than those who we need to make sure that are brought up out of poverty and into the middle class. Strengthening and expanding and building the middle class is good for everyone. A shrinking middle class is bad for everyone. It's bad for business. It's bad for everyone. It creates all the negative indices. It creates a pathway for there to be unsafe communities. It creates a pathway for domestic violence and domestic unrest, a pathway for crime and all of the negatives. It creates that. Why? Because where you have a large number of people who are impoverished and you have very few resources, that large number of people in some way or another are going to become unrest about the few resources. Because where people are hungry, where people are not fed, they're going to find a way to feed themselves. And in many cases, in too many cases, it usually is a counterproductive way that happens, and people tend to get hurt. That doesn't have to be. It does not have to be. We don't have a single poor white community. We don't have a single poor white community in Chicago. When I did come to Chicago 40 years ago, the poorest white community was in the Hegwisch community at that time. That no longer exists. That was the last bastion of poor whites in Chicago. There were poor whites in Chicago many, many years ago that were on the north side, and then they went to the west side. There were poor white communities. They don't exist anymore in Chicago. And they should not exist. As well, there should not exist any poor Black communities in Chicago, and we have the resources to alleviate it. What we don't have are people in place who are being pushed by those of us, by the wide, vast numbers of us, who we have pushed people into political office. We have elected more people into aldermanic offices. We have elected more people into mayoral offices. We have elected more people into state representatives, more state senators, a Black lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a state's attorney, a superintendent of police, many Black commissioners, 6 commissioners, a Black Cook County Board president, the 3rd, 4th, John Strozier. Then it was Commissioner Steele who served. Then it was Todd Strozier. And now it is Tony Pretwinkle, who I have a real issue with. But nonetheless, my point is that we have ushered a lot more Black people into public office. 17 Black mayors in the southern suburbs. Several Black mayors out in the West. We've elected people to public office. But what has happened is that there has not been an equitable appreciation to resources to the Black community at large. And so what we must do is not use these forms for just pure entertainment. We don't have the luxury of that type of approach to what I call individualism, that all of us, or many of us, that decide to just come to join together, to go together in a direction together, will have enormous influence on the people in public office. Currently, the people in public office, and then we will have a influence to put people in public office and to remove people from public office. Put people in public office that will have the commitment to go and to be persuasive enough to get the resources to bring investments that are needed, from education to economics, all in between, to our communities so that we can get more people into the middle class. There is a gentleman who talks about getting people into the middle class. He is a very wealthy man who understands what and the importance of the middle class is, and why we have been the envy of the world here in the United States. And we will not be the envy of the world if we don't correct and self-correct what is happening in the United States with the oligarchs and with people like the current administration that we have. Take a look, take a listen.
While screaming socialism. And what does that say about where American capitalism is going over the next 5-10 years?
I think it comes down to a basic question. What is America? And my kind of economic role model is Peter Drucker. I think an economy in America exists to create a robust middle class. The most ascendant countries over the last 20 years have been China and India. And it's one basic litmus test. How many people are you bringing into the middle class? The greatest innovation in history is not the iPhone or the semiconductor. It's the American middle class that beat back fascism in the middle of World War II, has financed and built the greatest innovations, whether it's radar, whether it's the internet, whether it's vaccines. The middle class in America is the greatest innovation in history. And people like to fall back into this right-wing notion that it's naturally self-healing. It's not. It's an accident in history. Typically throughout history, you have a small number of people who weaponize government. They're very talented. They aggregate power. They weaponize government, and they aggregate more and more spoils. And then the good news is it's self-correcting. This level of income inequality is usually self-correcting. The bad news is the means of self-correction are typically war, famine, or revolution. And if you want to talk about tax policy, the myth in tax policy is that the rich don't pay their taxes. That's just not true. The fulcrum is the following. There's super earners and super owners. The folks around your table are probably considered super earners. You make exceptional livings, but it's all current income reported on a W-2. And if you live in New Jersey or New York, you're probably paying 48 to 52% tax rates. Right. But if you're a super owner, I make my living starting and selling businesses. My last business, which was sold for $160 million, I'm very transparent about money. This gestalt or zeitgeist that people should not talk about money is nothing but an attempt to keep poor people down, because rich people talk about money all the time. It's important to be financially literate. The first $10 million for my $160 million sale was tax-free. My effective tax rate over the last 10 years has been 17%. The average tax rate on the wealthiest 25 Americans is 6%. Corporate tax rates are at their lowest point since 1939. At the same time, taxes have gone up for the super owners. Now, the bottom 50% don't pay much federal income tax, but they pay a lot in usage and consumption taxes. But this misdirect talking about tax rates misses the point. It's the tax code, which has gone from 400 pages to 4,000. And that 3,600 pages, quite frankly, is there to screw the middle class and continue to transfer more money to the super wealthy. The fastest growing demographic group in America is not seniors. It's not Latins. It's billionaires. We had 500 billionaires 10 years ago. We now have 2,500. So if you want to cram more and more wealth into a smaller group of people, we're on our way. And the weird thing about America is that we support it because our superpower is our optimism. The Achilles heel is that 99%, the bottom 99% who are getting screwed, don't mind these policies because they believe at some point they're going to be in that 1%. But where are we? We're in a country that's had unprecedented prosperity, but similar to the way William Gibson described the future, it has not been evenly distributed. When 40% of U.S. households are struggling with some sort of medical or dental debt, when a quarter or 20% of households with kids are food insecure, and yet we have one man, Jensen Huang, and I like Jensen, who is now worth more than Boeing. I mean, something is wrong here. And just let me go to the psychology of happiness. I think a lot about happiness because I struggle with it, Joe. You effectively, once you get above a certain level of wealth, you get no incremental happiness. So why on earth would you not go back to a tax policy of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where say above, pick a big number, 10 million, you actually pay more than 10%, maybe more than 20%, maybe more than 50%, because the difference between 30,000 a year for a household and 50,000 is enormous to the well-being of that household. Low-income kids in low-income households have higher resting blood pressure, but the difference between making 10 million a year and 15 million a year offers you no happiness. But these individuals have weaponized government, and we risk revolution, whether it's CEOs being murdered in the street, whether it's a Me Too movement that had righteous components of it, or Black Lives Matter. What are these movements? They are targeting the wealthy. We are in the midst of a series of small revolutions to correct income inequality. And the reason we put an insurrectionist and a rapist in office is because for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. Why? Because the majority of households are having the oxygen sucked out of the room, such that a small number of individuals and a small number of companies can be worth more than nation states. Income inequality is out of control. Our tax policy has gone full oligarch.
There you go. And that is where we have been headed since 1980. Ronald Reagan introduced the infancy of what we are living full blown today, and have people who are never going to be at that level. And I for one, don't believe that anybody should have $1 billion, and much less $500 billion. And I think that I don't have any problems with people being wealthy. Like I said, I have, have earned a pretty good living, and my wife and I, we do okay. And I don't have any ambitions to be a billionaire, because, quite frankly, even if I, were, I would be finding ways to make sure that was used to impact the lives of people right around where I live, if that was the case. But that's not the case. The point is that we must understand that this is not an attack on wealthy people. It is the attack that we must be on a system of income inequality. And we have people like the current administration who is completely incompetent, who have no clue about what it means to help to build an agrarian society where that more people will participate in the enjoyment of the resources that we have in this country, that make this country strong, that will make this country strong in every area of landscape of this country. And it has got people who really do not understand the science of governance, the science of politics, and the science of making sure that we have a strong agrarian society where there are people who only have to work an 8-hour day. Nobody should have to work a 16-hour day or a 12-hour day. Nobody should have to work 7 days a week in order to provide for his or her or his and her family. People should be able to work an 8-hour day. People should be able to earn a very good living working 40 hours a week. And if I had my druthers, people would work 32 hours a week and have 4 days or certainly 3 days to spend with their families. We've seen time and time again where companies that have experimented with that do very well. There are still companies that do that and show that they have great productivity in their companies. In fact, they have increased productivity. But the point is that that is where we need to be focused on. I know that there are people who like to focus on, well, you have to focus on business. No, you do not have to focus on business, because that is not the science of building a strong agrarian society, period, and an economy. That's why one of the most important reports that come out every month, what is it? It is the job report, because the job report tells us where the state of our economy is, the strength of our economy, and where our economy is going. And the more people that we have that are in the middle class, the more people that are earning a very good living, those people buy homes, they buy cars, they buy clothes, they go take their families to vacation. In other words, they are circulating dollars, enriching our economies, creating opportunities for others to participate in it. That is what the reciprocation of an agrarian society is all about. And that is where we must be. Dr. King talked about the concern of the greed factor and the poverty level when he was 38 years old. He was 38 years old. And Dr. King himself, here's Dr. King when he was making and reminding in a speaking to a group that he was speaking to at a church. I'm not sure where the church was. Take a listen.
I'm going to be honest enough to tell you that I'm worried about America. Yeah. I'm worried about our nation because it's sick with racism still. And just think about the fact that we live in a nation which was founded on the principle that all men are created equal. And yet men are still arguing over whether the color of a man's skin determines the content of his character. And I believe that the Lord told me to say to the United States of America that is sick with militarism and is sick with excessive materialism. Have you ever thought about it? There are between 38 and 50 million people in the United States of America who are poverty-stricken, making income less than the poverty level. And yet, this is the richest nation in the history of the world. Our national gross product this year will go beyond $800 billion. And yet there are between 38 and 50 million people who are poverty-stricken. Now, something wrong. A lot of people are afraid to say it. But I don't mind saying it. You see, somebody said to me the other night, don't you think, Dr. King, you are going to have to start speaking more in terms of the administration's policy? Because since you started talking against the war in Vietnam, it's hurt the budget of your organization, and people who once respected you don't respect you anymore. And I had to look over and say, sir, I'm sorry, but you don't know me. I'm not a consensus leader. I don't determine what is right and wrong by looking at the budget of my organization, and I don't determine what is right and wrong by taking a Gallup poll of the majority opinion. And so, because there's something wrong, our struggle must continue. And what we must see is that our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay.
That was in 1968, where there were 38 to 50 million people who were living in poverty. Our GDP as of 2023 was $27 trillion. $27 trillion. And we still have more than 36.8 million people living in poverty, about 11% of our population, where we have a gross domestic product of $27 trillion. That number is probably closer to $30 trillion. Hear me, and hear me really, really sincerely, and hear me good. You and I have a serious responsibility. And this is not something that will, is going to overtax any of us. And I really am hoping that those of you who watch this podcast and watch this program or listen to this program, that you will be moved to engage with us together. What it is that I am hoping to do is for us to finally build the example of the mass political structure to address this problem. And we can address it and watch it be corrected. If we engage, we can watch inequality in this city, in this county, in this state, and thusly in this country, because we can be the example of what organizing actually does, and that it has the impact. And we have the the incubator. It's still in the incubator stage because we have never done it. We've come close. We have some examples of intermittence of being organized at certain points, but not institutionally, to where we are constantly, at a robust number, not at just a frayed number. At a robust number where it forces government locally, state, and on a national basis, because national politics and national policy comes from what happens locally and in states. We can drive that. Why? Because we have the numbers in one of the wealthiest regions in the country that does not exist in other regions around the country. Here in Chicago and Cook County, 1.7 million people that are Black, that are registered voters, only about 30% of those participate in our agrarian building process. Only about 30% participate. And that 30%, in a large degree, determines many of the offices that people are actually elected in. However, we do not determine who those representatives are. We just vote for them because we haven't put ourselves in the position to, one, be able to select who a candidate will be, and put ourselves in a position to elect who the representative will be. That's where you have now cultivated the ability and cultivated real strength. Bar anybody's billions and hundreds of millions of dollars, that if we were to, I'm going to do some basic math. If we were to put together the voting block that covered the city of Chicago, the county of Cook, meaning the surrounding suburbs, just the surrounding suburbs, we could impact all of Illinois where people live in our communities and strengthen those communities. And thusly strengthen those communities, we strengthen all of Illinois. So let's just start with the city of Chicago and the surrounding communities. 1.7 million people that are registered Black voters in the city of Chicago and Cook County. If we were to take 250,000 to put into our block all around Chicago and Cook County, and this is very doable, and we did it 10 by 10. So each one of us, we start going out and we're building, and we build our block. We have our infrastructure in place. And so we would have the ability to select candidates that would ultimately be those that we elect. With that number of people, that means that we cover every district that is an electable district, and we have the wherewithal that we will be the difference maker in who becomes the representatives in those major offices that really have a lot of influence on policy, like the mayor of the city of Chicago and the governor of the state of Illinois, the treasurer, the comptrollers, the alder people. With 250,000 people, a part of one union, a part of one block, is enormous, enormous power. That's political science. This is not some sort of hypothetic, or this is not some sort of speculation. This is political science. And science is finding a question, asking a question, and finding a solution to that question based on practices. And in order to have political power, you have to have people who you have influence on in public positions. In order for them to be in public position, you have to use your resources to be able to get those people put into those positions to carry out your agenda. If we were to organize ourselves together, 250,000 people, and then we say, okay, we got 250,000 people that pay, let's just say $10 a year. Let's just say that $10 a year, $10 a year is $2.5 million. That's just a year, right? Let's say that we had 250,000 people and they put into the treasury $10 a month. Now it's more than that. I'm sorry. 250,000 at $10 a month. That's $2.5 million a month times 12. Now you have $30 million. You can run every campaign. Now, this is not talking about where you have all these non-for-profits and most of the money that comes in just pays for, the upper whatever management, right? That's not what this is about. These are resources that would be used purely for the purposes of making sure that we have the ability to have people elected to public office that will push the agenda that is going to make sure that there are investments in every spectrum of building an agrarian society, like education, health, housing, mental health, every area that means, extra leisure activity, all of those things that are required that lead to having a very healthy community. We do not have to have police. In a big city like Chicago, we do not have to have the need for police that are racing up and down the community. I'm not talking about eliminating police, but we can have a police department that actually is a board, B-O-R-E-D, police department. And I say that, with a little satire, but I'm serious about it. Because if we are eliminating the need for people operating in high-risk activity and creating opportunity for more people to participate in the middle class and having an opportunity at a good paying job, we will have less of a need for a robust police department. Where do I get that from? I get that from the research and the footwork and the legwork that I've been able to do. And it came really as a result of me walking the streets with Father Michael Flager every Friday night. Now, I did that for, 2 or 3 years, and I still walk with him, not every Friday night, but I still walk every summer because it gives me the opportunity, not just there, but the opportunity to speak with people who wouldn't ordinarily speak with me because I'm a stranger and, they would see me on the street and they're going to talk to me. But talking with people who are engaged in what I like to call high risk activity. And I can't remember the first time and this happened, some 6-7 years ago, that the fellows on the streets, some of the young fellows on the streets, Father Mike and the group would be walking and, you would see them looking and you try to engage some of them. But every week I would see some of these fellows because they're in their area, right? They're in their area. And what we would do is we would just speak to them. to kind of develop a rapport. But by the middle of the summer, we had developed a rapport, and some of us on a first name basis, where we got an opportunity to have a conversation. And I asked the question in having a conversation with some of them. My question was this: if we had a job for each one of you all where you would be earning a good wage, you were earning a very good living, do you think that you would do that and you would give this up? Every single one of those young men said, absolutely so. But they also said, I've got, a record. I got a felony. I'm marked. Whatever way that they said it. I said, that aside, I'm not even talking about that. That aside, if we knew that about you and we were able to make that kind of opportunity available, they said, and was maybe longer than 5 or 7 years ago, they said yes. What it did for me is I went and I got some people and we sat down and I gave them what my vision is and to attract them. So I started doing some research and finding out how many people do we have that are in the system in Chicago and that's being recycled in the system in Chicago. I found out through working with people in the county, and getting information that there's about 130,000 people that were a part of that. From our community, of that 130,000 was about 80 or 90. So I started doing some calculations and doing some math on what would it cost to create a $50,000 a year stipend job for those people that I call the at-risk people, the people with marks, the people with records that we know of, right? That don't have, So they don't have, their education, they don't have their basic education, that sort of thing. So I met with people who were people in the social work area, psychologists, administrators, counselors. So these people are a part of the board to help me to formulate this vision. And what the vision is that after finding out that we spend more than $4 billion a year, we spend $4 billion a year recycling people in Chicago and around through the criminal injustice system. We spend those dollars, $4 billion. When I did the math of what it would cost to provide economic opportunities, job opportunities for that same group of people, it was about $1 billion a year. And this is how it works. We bring them in, assess them, find out what their area of interest is and their areas of ability. And we match them up with a company that would be willing to adopt them for 3 years. And in those 3 years, the candidate, the young man or young lady, we would give them a stipend salary of $50,000 a year. And the company that adopts them would receive also an equal stipend of $50,000 a year. They would have the wraparound services. They would have the counselors, resource counsel that's available to help them so they can get their apartments and how to set up their bank accounts. They would have all of those services. And then they would also have the services of, we would have access available to them, that they will have counselors that they can come to and they could talk to, that sort of thing, to help them to acclimate themselves into the mainstream of society like anybody else. That this program would cost a little more than $1 billion a year for the same number of people that we spend $4 billion a year recycling in and out of that system. Because I don't believe that, you would give up on anybody. Certainly before they do something as heinous as murdering and killing someone or getting killed themselves. If we can create this kind of opportunity that says to that group of people, this is available to you with the marks on your record. So you don't have to worry about coming in, filling out an application, and that application asking you, have you committed a felony or have you been convicted? We already know that. It doesn't matter. Now, some people will say, well, what happens if you have somebody out there who is wanted for murder? Now, okay, some of you want to take that extreme position. There's an answer for that. The people who are wanted for heinous activity will have to be held responsible for that. We're not getting in the way of law enforcement nor the judiciary. There are fewer of those people out of the majority. The majority of those people are not people who have committed those kind of heinous crimes or murders or rape, that sort of thing. So, but this program being available to them. So if those oligarchs out there want to really talk about using their resources to address poverty, to address crime, then why wouldn't they commit $1 billion a year, $1.5 billion a year, right here in this region? And I guarantee you, with that kind of investment, that kind of target investment, that kind of committed investment into people who have these issues, we would be able to turn the majority of those people around. There is no 100%, no guarantee about anything. So again, those of you who want to take the purest approach, take your purest approach and be cynical. I'm talking to those of you who are people of hope and hope for your people and hope for our people to grow, that we can make those changes. And we don't even have to rely on the oligarchs. I'm just simply saying it out there. If they're really interested in wanting to do something about addressing it, they could support that effort. However, we can do it with the resources that we have available by making sure that we are prioritizing dealing with poverty, getting people out of poverty. to prioritize and see how we can resource and use resources that we're spending $4 billion a year to recycle people in and out of a criminal justice system so the people can stand before a camera and talk tough about how tough they are going to be on crime. You want to be tough on crime? Get tough on poverty. You want to be tough on crime? Get tough on poverty. Get tough on poverty. You want to talk tough about the criminal justice system and getting criminal off the streets? You want to get criminals off the street? I want to get criminals off the street too. Your idea is a little bit different. You want to get them off the street by arresting them, convicting them, putting them in jail. I want to get them off the street by giving them an opportunity to get a job so they can be able to support themselves and support their family and contribute to society. You want to get them by putting them into a cage and treating them less than a human being and giving them a number and, that sort of thing. We just have two different approaches. I want to get criminals off the street too. I want to get criminals off the streets by helping them be more responsible, by giving them the support and giving them the opportunity. I'll never forget it. I have a young man, and I hope one day that he would be willing to come on and have a conversation with me about that. In 2005, my former partner and I bought the Grand Ballroom at 63rd Cottage Grove, and we renovated the Grand Ballroom in 63rd Cottage Grove. And at the time, we were doing 93 condominiums at the 26 in Dearborn. My partner hired this young man who had just come from serving a long prison sentence for murder. He was a child killer, a child murderer. And he'd served 15 or 20 years. And I would go to the job site and I would see, towards the end of the day, I would see him, this guy, as the crew were getting off, I would see him running, down the street and running out every day to the bus stop. And one day I asked him, I said, why is that guy right there? Why is he always running? Like when they get off, why is he always? And so he told me, he said, well, he is on a work release program and he has to be home by a certain time. So he has to get there, catch the bus so they can make sure that he is at home by a certain time. But I never asked the question. I was like, I never asked the question. Okay. What did he do? However, some time had passed. And then my partner said to me, hey, this job is ending here. Do you have anything over there that you could use this young man for? I don't want to call his name, but this young man, do you have anything that you could have him to do over there so we can, keep him on? And so I said, yeah. So I brought him over and gave him some responsibilities and some, jobs and that sort of thing. And when we were opening the ballroom, people would use the ballroom. They had an opportunity to come in prior to their event and set up and all of that sort of thing. So what I did is I gave him a key. And part of his job was to open and allow the people to come in to do their setups and that sort of thing, and some other things that were going on. I never really thought about it. I never thought about how significant that may and would have been. Just never, ever crossed my mind. Till one day his mother came to see me. And she said, I am so-and-so's mother. I'd like to talk to you. And so I said, sure. So she came in and she sat down to me and she said, I want to just tell you that we really appreciate you giving my son a chance. And he comes home every day and he talks about that you gave him back the key to his life. Now, I thought that she was just speaking in, sort of like a metaphor. I was like, well, okay, well, that's really good. I'm glad that it's helping him and that sort of thing. And, and I started speaking in terms of metaphors, key of life to do this, that. And she was like, no, I don't think you really know what I'm saying. When I said that you gave him the key, this is what his mother said to me. When I said to you, you gave him the key to his life, he said, the fact that you gave him a key to this place said to him that there is somebody who trusts him, and that meant the world to him. And he guards that with his life. And that meant all of the world of difference to him. To make a long story short, that young man was one of the best workers that we had, certainly one of the best workers that I have. And I still talk to him to this day. He calls me and lets me know how he's doing and that sort of thing. And I'll, sometimes call him to check on him to see how he's doing. But that young man went on to get a job being a supervisor. Now, this was a person who had been convicted of a heinous crime when he was a 13-year-old. And he went on to be a supervisor at a major retail outlet, Menards. Then he went from there to operating his working for Amazon and then operating his own delivery fleet. I call it fleet, not, a couple trucks. And is doing well and did everything that he needed to do by making sure that he was outside of the environment that sucked him in before. So he dealt with those triggers and made sure that he kept himself separated from that so that there would be no attraction to going back to that. And he's doing fine to this date. He's doing well. And what if my partner would have said, no, I don't want somebody who's got a record. Certainly don't want somebody who has got that kind of record. It could be this, that, or the other. What if that didn't happen? I would not have had the opportunity to say yes to that young man. And what if he had told me what the young man's record was? What if he had told me then what his record was? Would I have been open to receive him? I don't know. And I'm glad I didn't know, so that I wouldn't have to think about that and may have turned him down. Because I would have regretted having the opportunity to help someone find their path to going on into doing greater things. That is what is the driving force for me. That is the driving force for me. as well as looking at my own life in terms of from God to me. I've committed, any crime um, like that. Um, and but certainly, if I were to, look at my life and in comparison to how God would judge it, I don't deserve to be where I am. None of us deserve, to be where we are. So, but what if I would have known that? I might not have made that decision. And thank God that I didn't have that information. Thank God that I didn't have that information to prejudice him. Thank God that I didn't have that information. I don't know if I would have, but thank God I didn't have the information that I had to even consider it. But now that I have had that experience, I'll do it all over again. I would do it all over again. But I think that that is the way. That is an approach. And I think it would be a significant approach to getting people off the streets, to getting criminals off the street. We can get criminals off the street by caging them, arresting them, convicting them, and caging them, or we can get people off the street by arresting them into a pathway and putting them into a pathway of productivity, of giving them an opportunity to be productive. And I think by far, the majority of them will go on to succeed. Some may fall off, but the majority of them will go on. And I think that we will attack the crime problem and to getting people off the streets without ever having to put people in jail. We could remove guns. We could remove a whole pathway, a litany of problems we could eliminate. We could absolutely eliminate. If we are willing to go beyond the limitations that we put on ourselves, if we are willing to go beyond restricting people to the limitations that we tend to put on. There was a show, remember the show Criminal Minds? Criminal Minds called The Evolution. There was a quote by a man by the name of Arthur Schopenhauer. And Arthur Schopenhauer says, everyone takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. In other words, you limit yourself and your thoughts, and you apply that to everybody else in the world. I take off the lens of having tunnel vision to having a big, wide view and vision, and to think way outside of what we are taught and what we, in our emotions, can tend to restrict ourselves. And I'm asking for you to open up and to have that wide scope if you haven't even thought about it, is to think about it. We can get criminals off the street. We can make our streets safer. And it doesn't have to be with police running around with guns and, searching for criminals and that sort of thing. That's, we're not going to eliminate it, but boy, we can reduce it significantly. We can reduce it significantly so that we can have a south side of Chicago, a west side of Chicago that functions just like a Flossmoor or an Orland Park or a Batavia or a Naperville, where the police are bored stiff. We could have that in Chicago to where we have police that are running around or walking around or driving around giving maybe traffic citations. And that we can eliminate a significant amount of poverty. We can eliminate poverty if we focus on it. I mean, focus on it. If we laser focus on eliminating poverty and getting more people into the opportunity of the middle class, it will drive business. We've spent too much time focusing on business rather than focusing on the business of people and getting people out of the conditions that they're in into the conditions that they could provide for themselves without having to work 2.5 jobs, 2 jobs, 13 hours a day, where mothers and fathers can work an 8-hour shift, come home, be with their children, have dinner with their children, eat dinner at the dinner table, so prepare meals, and have some interaction with their families because they're not exhausted or they have to come home to get a bite to eat, go to bed so that they can get up and go to the second job. We can eliminate that if we decided to operate outside of our selfishness, if we operate outside of our individualism. Call me Pollyannish, all you like. I'm never going to lose that vision. And I hope that some of you will catch that vision. That's what I am hoping that we can do. Join us, join me, text 10x10 to 855-909-1385 if you believe that we together can eliminate and build a stronger, healthier, welcoming Black community. I don't have to be in a political office. You don't have to be in a political office. We can drive the policy right from where we are. We can drive that policy right from where we are. Together, we can do it. I can't do it by myself. We can't just do it with a few people. We can do it with a lot of people. And we can impact a lot of people's lives, some that we will know and some that we won't know. But what we will know is when we start to seeing our community, complexion of our community in terms of how we feel around our community, how we see that our community is operating, we will know that the work that we are doing, that we will see the fruit of that. And I guarantee you that if we got ourselves together and built our block so that we can put visions like that into place, we could see the conversion of the South Side and the West Side of Chicago in less than 10 years. We can see it. We can live it. And thusly, that we strengthen the South and West Sides of Chicago, we strengthen all of Chicago, and we make Chicago, the city of Chicago, then becomes a world-class city that will be the envy of the world. Because the fact is that whenever you have more people coming out of poverty and more people participating in the middle class, everybody else does better and creates and it recycles more opportunities. I'm asking for you to join that kind of effort, because we can sit around and we can criticize all day long. We can criticize to make ourselves feel good, to criticize whoever it is, to criticize Brandon Johnson if you don't like Brandon Johnson, to criticize Pritzker if you don't like Pritzker. We can criticize. Doesn't take a lot of effort to do that. And it certainly wouldn't take a lot of effort to use that energy in doing something more positive, to making those people who we criticize. We can make those people, let's assume that we're talking about those, we can make those people who are in the political spaces, the public office spaces right now, if we were to do what we can do, and what I'm talking about us envisioning together, we could make them deliver. We could make them deliver that. Why? Because they want to stay there. And if they want to stay there, we have one condition, that you deliver. If you don't deliver, then we put somebody else there. That's just that simple. It's not personal. It's not an attack. If you can't deliver in our public commons, which belong to the public, if you can't deliver these types of objectives, then we have to put somebody else there to deliver. Period. Plain and simple. Look, those are the kinds of things that I want to spend the time on this program, on this podcast, talking about. And I want for it to catch fire. That we are actually talking about something that produces widespread opportunity for people who have been written off. I want for you to think outside of that. Now, I want to ask you to join me this Thursday night at the Woodson Regional Library. That's at 95th and Halsted at 5:30. 95th and Halsted at 5:30. We're not asking for any money. None of that. I'm asking for your participation. 5:30, we're out of there at 7. From 5:30 to 7 this Thursday night, June the 12th. As we approach, we're 1 week prior to Juneteenth, that we want to really kick this off, and to have your participation and your engagement and to be excited about this. Now, look, this is not going to happen overnight, but we can make it happen quickly. The faster that we produce and the faster that we organize, we can make it happen much faster. And we can put measuring marks in place that we can see these things happen. All right. So look, that's going to do it for this week. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to the program this week. Intellectualradio.com. We're here every Monday night from 7 o'clock till 9. Next Monday night is Monroe Monday. Monroe Anderson will be with me. We are working to get George Johnson, the founder of AfroSheen. He has just written a book. We were with him on Saturday. We're trying to get him scheduled on the program. Hopefully we can get him scheduled on the program next Monday night. We're going to try to do that. And we're also going to be talking with someone who I call my son, Joshua Banks, who is going to be starring in the play at the Goodman Theater starting on the 21st. I'm asking for all of you to go to the Goodman Theater website and get tickets. You can get them at half price off. The Goodman Theater, let's go support him. He's going to be there the 21st through, I forget the date, but let's sell out all of those shows. We're going to talk more about that. Going to try to get him on next week's program. I want to thank you all for tuning into the program on this Monday night's edition of the People Show. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Talk to you next week. Hopefully see you Thursday.